und der Wald, er steht so schwarz und leer. Weh, mio, weh, und die Vögel singen nicht mehr. Ohne dich kann ich nicht sein, ohne dich. Mit dir bin ich auch allein, ohne dich.
This is another episode of Full Disclosure, brought to you by InfinityExist.com. I'm Knox, and this is Patch, and today we're going to do try booting. We're going to show you how to boot Windows XP, Backtrack 2, and Ubuntu all on the same computer. So let's get right into it.
So we're going to assume that you already have Windows XP or Windows Vista already installed on your machine. I just have disk management open here, and you can see that we have a 40 gig hard drive. And basically in this video we're going to split into 3 different partitions for the 3 different operating systems. Really this episode just is supposed to give you a general idea on how to multi-boot your computer. It's really not that hard. The first step in this process is making sure Windows is shut down properly. That's very important when you're trying to make the other partitions with Backtrack 2. After that, we're just going to boot up. We're just going to put in our Backtrack 2 live CD and just boot it up. Once it's all booted up, just open up the terminal and type mount, and that will display all your current mounted devices. And you have to unmount your hard disk, or else you won't be able to resize the partitions. To unmount a device, just type in U-mount and then the device name. And if you type in mount again, you can confirm that it was unmounted. Then we're going to use Qt parted to resize our current partition, our current Windows partition, which is taking up the full 40 gigs. As you can see right there, all you have to do is right click it and click resize. And since we have 40 gigs and we're doing 3 different partitions, we're going to make this 10 gigs. That way it'll leave room for all the other partitions and a little bit more for a shared partition that'll be shared between all the operating systems. So once you resize it, all you have to do is go to File Commit, and that will rewrite your disk so it has a smaller partition. It's very important that you back up all your things, because during this process you can lose data. It might be a good idea also to defragment your hard disk. And if you get an error in this while it's trying to resize your drive, it's probably because you didn't shut down Windows properly. Alright. So after it's successfully resized, you can quit out of Qt parted, and we're going to use the program fdisk to add the different partitions for the different operating systems. If you type in P, it'll show you all your current partitions, and there's only one right now, and that's the Windows partition. And then we're going to type in N to make a new partition. We're going to make a primary partition, so we put in P and 2 because we already have the first primary partition, which is our Windows partition. And when it asks you the first cylinder to use, just push enter, you just use default. Then it's going to ask you how much space you want to put in that partition. And since we did 10 gigs for the Windows partition, let's do another 10 gigs for our Backtrack 2 partition. And you do that by putting plus, and then the size of the partition in megabytes, and then a capital M. If you're having trouble figuring out how many megabytes are in a gigabyte, you can just use Google. Just type in 10 gigabytes to megabytes, and it'll do the calculations for you. Alright, so then we're going to make another primary partition. It's going to be primary partition 3, and this is going to be for a shared drive. It's going to be shared between all our operating systems. It's going to be also 10 gigs, so it's the same thing as last time. And after that, we're going to make a extended partition, because you only can have 4 primary partitions, but if you make one of those primary partitions an extended partition, you can have multiple partitions inside that extended partition. So the last extended partition is going to take up the rest of our space on our disk. So you just push enter when it asks you how big it should be. It'll just give you the default size. And that will be used for our Ubuntu operating system, and also our swap partition, which will be used for both Backtrack 2 and Ubuntu. Basically, the swap partition is when you run out of RAM, it'll use this partition for like virtual RAM. It'll write to the disk. Alright, so once you get all those partitions made, you can use P again, and it'll show you all of them, make sure they're in there. And then what you want to do is push W, and that'll write to your disk and save all those partitions. And then the next thing we want to do is format our second partition, which is our Backtrack 2 partition, and we wanted to format it to the extended 3 file type. And you just do that with the mkfs.ext3, and then the device, which is our hard disk and the second partition. And I'm just going to open up Qtparted to show you how graphically how our disk is laid out right now. As you can see, we have those 4 partitions and then 1 extended partition, and the extended partition is the last one circled in blue. And then, yeah. Alright. And before we can start installing Backtrack 2, we have to reboot our system. Alright. Once Backtrack is finally booted back up, we're just going to use the graphical installing. You want to make sure you select the second partition, or else it's going to install Backtrack over your XP partition. So you want to make sure you select the second disk. Also, it asks you where to write the master boot record, and then you can just, it doesn't matter where it writes it, because when we install Ubuntu, it's going to overwrite that and install Grub for us, which Grub is a bootloader. We'll get to that later. And then you can just click install and wait till it to finish installing. Alright, once it's done installing, just close out the installer and shut down Backtrack.
Alright, now that we have Backtrack 2 installed, we're going to go ahead and install Ubuntu. We're going to pop in our live CD and we're going to select Install Ubuntu. Now once it boots up, it's really a pretty straightforward installation. On your desktop there's going to be an install icon. You just go ahead and click that. The Ubuntu installation is a very straightforward installation. You just go through it like you would any other. You select language, time zones, that type of stuff. Okay, when it comes to selecting where we're going to be putting this, you want to make sure you use the letters continuous free space, because that's going to put that on the 4th partition that we created, so we don't overwrite the other 2 operating systems. This just gives you an option to pull over some information. Now here you're just going to have to go ahead and put in your name, your login name, your password, and the name of your computer on your network. Alright, here, this is kind of important. You want to check to make sure that it's actually putting it where you want it. You can see that extended 3 partition. It's going to be creating a 5th and 6th partition in that extended partition and swap. And then you just want to let it install, obviously. Now towards the end of the installation of Ubuntu, it's going to go ahead and install Grub, which is a bootloader. It's a really nice bootloader that comes with Ubuntu, which can go ahead insert your hard disk and find those other operating systems you have installed, so you have an easy way to select which operating system you want to boot into. And just go ahead and restart. Alright, now that Ubuntu's installed and we're restarting here, you're going to see Grub here. First we're going to go into Backtrack just to do some basic configurations. Now, Backtrack's loading just fine here, but if you do get a fatal error, you're going to have to boot into your live Backtrack CD, and we're going to show you what you need to change so you don't get that fatal error. Alright, now that we got Backtrack 2 booted up, first we're going to make sure that it's activated that swap file that we created with Ubuntu. To do that, you open up the console and you type free. If under total it says 0 by swap, what you need to, the command you need to run is swap on, and then the location of that last partition, which is the swap partition, which is /dev/HDA6. Okay, now that we've done that, we're going to configure the grub bootloader config file from the Ubuntu partition. Alright, we're going to go ahead and scroll down, and if you're getting that fatal error we talked about, you're going to have root equals current here, and you want to change it to what we have. And as you could see when we did boot up through Grub, there was a lot of extra things you could boot into. We're going to go ahead and clean that up, so we only have our 3 main operating systems. We're going to clean up the titles for all the operating systems. We're just going through and commenting out things that we feel that we don't need. And if you need to ever get back into there, you can always go back and uncomment that out. Alright, so go ahead and save that after we've done our editing. Just hit Control-X and then Y to save. Alright, now that we're not booting off a live CD, we're going to go ahead and change our root password. To do so, all you do is type passwd space root, and then you just enter in the new root password. Now we're going to go ahead and edit the boot up screen for Backtrack 2. It's located at /etc/issue. And we're just going to clean it up because, I mean, we all know how to boot up Backtrack. So we're going to change it. We're just going to take it all out of there. We are going to leave the first little bit of code there. That's going to make the text green. So when we log in, we're typing in green just for fun. And now we're just going to log out and show you how that little bit of extra code we left makes our login green.
I like green.
I like green too, Greg. Alright, now that we have that all configured, we're going to boot back into XP, and when it first boots up after you've changed up all the partitions, it's going to kind of freak out at you, so it's got to do a full scan disk just to make sure you didn't lose anything. Now that we're booted back up into XP, we're going to go to the disk manager again. Now that third partition that we created as our shared partition between the Linux and Windows operating systems, you're going to have to delete that and reformat it as FAT32. Make sure you choose the right one here because you don't want to delete one of your operating systems that you've already installed. Also, we're going to do it as FAT32 because NTFS, it's not going to be as stable when you're going between the 2 operating systems. Going to change the volume label to shared, obviously. Do a quick format if you want. And there you have it. And as you can see, our shared appears on Windows. Alright, now we're going to boot into Ubuntu to show you how to access that from the other operating system. Alright, now that we're booted into Ubuntu, you just go ahead and click on that shared drive. It's going to ask you for your administrator password to mount it. And there you have it. Now that shared drive is going to allow you to share files between the two operating systems without much trouble. And that's pretty much it.
Alright, so that's it for our episode on triple booting. We will be making a vlog on how to dual boot your computer with Windows XP or Vista and Backtrack 2, just in case you're unsure on how just to do that. I'm Patchy, this is Knox. See you later.